In Shareverse of 2019, both the subcoral and coral alignments had massive successes with their respective series. Subcoral Knights centered around the tragic but brought together tales of its host Carmilla Belmont Kernstein, and Coral Knights followed the live stream army protecting the realm by the redeemed and experienced Edward Barnes. With the following of Astral Souls for both shows, it was only natural that competition was meant to be had. But at the start of the summer of 2019, both series would come together to save the timelines from total eradication. This is Double Coral Knights 3. I'm AJ, and considering the fact that both of these series were up to their third installment by 2019, I decided why not let them have one big crossover event. However, most of the focus does wane towards the Coral Knights elements primarily, so you'll have to excuse Carmilla's group not really contributing that much. But that said, the first half of the year was a huge game changer for the Coral alignment. By May, the Chronica events that were depicted in Mortal Kombat 11 had come to pass. As a norm in Shareverse, if any reality/universe-breaking alteration occurs in the timeline or universe, all Astral Souls that are not involved in the incident would not be affected, meaning Edward and the others were not aware of the timeline being reset and reverted as seen in the ending of Mortal Kombat 11, since that all happened in a blink of an eye for them. In a way, it did feel somewhat anticlimactic that the Coral Knights did not have one final standoff with the Revenants or Dark Raiden, much to Melina's disappointment, since the next time the group got together after the game's release, the zombified Defenders of the Realm were revived, and Liu Kang now became the elemental god protector of Earthrealm, who also happened to have the Hourglass in his possession. At the very least, Katana did finally get her happily ever after, waiting nearly 25 years. But this wasn't the only thing that was looking up for the alignment. For a while, the deceased Astral Souls in Heaven, who had relatives or friends in Coral Knights, decided to come together and create a friends group from above. This was led by Catherine, Edward's mother, as a way to get to know the people her son was affiliated with. However, this friend group was really small. I highly doubt Big Boss went to heaven after he died. So really, the only people Catherine was with starting in 2017 was Makoto Yuki and Shinjiro Aragaki, former members of SEAS, which happened whenever Megaten was inducted into Coral Knights. And for a while, it was only Catherine and her two Japanese high schooler acquaintances. But that would change with the ending of Coral Knights 2 Golden at the start of 2019, when Darling in the Franxx was inducted in both Coral Knights and Subcoral Knights. Because of the actions made by X-Squad 13 in the finale, its main stars, Hero and Zero Two, would join the group therapy session in the afterlife. And that is where our story properly begins. It was the end of June, and both hosts were starting to experiment with newer directions for the series. Carmilla and Edward never really were at each other's throats, but they understood that good competition means good showmanship for their respective shows. That was until several rifts of multiple timelines came crashing in. Liu Kang stopped Edward and informed him that overnight the Hourglass was stolen and rigged, leading to the various Onis and even Revenants from the past years to be released and running around. In other words, the Coral Knights were back at work. But it wasn't just Edward who was affected by this. The minute Carmilla walked into her office that day, she was stopped by a giant lizard monster and a silver mechanical fox. The fox extended herself to reveal a cyborg woman. She called herself Yan and introduced the lizard as Sunny, a British woman whose brain was in the monster. And yes, she could speak. They explained they were from different universes who recently got connected with the Prime Universe in Shareverse for the then anthology series on Netflix, Love, Death, and Robots. However, during her stay, Yan realized that the Prime Universe was also hiding a calamity that could be awakened at any moment. And with the Hourglass hijacking, Yan decided to bring Sunny along for backup as the two returned to the Prime Universe to warn Carmilla about what's to come. And if you thought that Liu Kang borderline losing his password to the Hourglass and an ancient vixen emerging from the ashes was bad enough, well, you're in for a ride. The Hourglass in Shareverse is the time hole from the Universal Disaster series, but on crack. It could not only access any timelines in all of Shareverse's alignments, but even alter the timeline it's located in. And since it had similar properties to that of the time hole, the scheming threat of the T-3000, of course, got involved. Editor's note: it should be noted that the T-3000 was not the one responsible for stealing the Hourglass. He was just one of the many people who were aware of the hijacking. Moving on. With his already burning hatred for Edward and Carmilla in their respective series, and the fact that Dark Fate was placed in yet another continuity, and that the T-800 in Mortal Kombat 11 was based off of that movie, Connor had more than enough motivation to get his hands on the Hourglass and rewrite history in his hands. In addition, the Hourglass was randomly picking and choosing specific time periods to go rip out of, one of which was from Japan 2012, where the events of Kill la Kill were occurring in Shareverse. As such, the younger, competitive Ryuko and Satsuki were thrusted into 2019. They were still at each other's throats, and neither of them knew that they were sisters. Regardless, Ryuko was happy to work with Edward, but Melina was panicking, mainly for the fact that in 2015, she kills everyone from that series as depicted in Pierce the Heavens, and she was dreading the fact that she would eventually have to tell Ryuko from the past. So, in order to alleviate the pain, the present-day Mako, who was still dead, had to visit Earth and keep Ryuko company, while Satsuki was on her own trying to get back to her time. But the portal to 2012 was open just long enough to catch the interest of a powerful monster from that time. Going back to Carmilla, Yan requested to meet with Katana as she stated that the two had a kinship. As mentioned in previous Shareverse videos, Edenians possess a genetic trait called the Holy Gene, which has a 1 in 4 chance to be revived when dying. However, if this gene is transferred to an Earthrealmer, they are given the ability to turn into a devil. Yan explains that the Holy Gene was a relative to that of the Holy Gene, Yan's race of shape-shifting foxes who worship the goddess Ari. But some thousand years ago, Ari fell asleep, waiting for the right moment to be reawakened and cause mischief through that of a possessed body. And with the Holy Gene being extinct in the Prime Universe, Ari would set her sights to humans who are not only infected with the Holy Gene, but even to those who have a defective gene given to them at birth, meaning Kula and Futaba, two devil members from Coral Knights, could be in trouble. The only way to exorcise Ari is through Yan's experience in the religion and traditions, and again, Sunny is only here for backup. So, that's the plan. Edward and Carmilla team up, and both Coral and Sub-Coral Knights make it their duty to take back the Hourglass from virtually impossible odds. But they got some spiritual help too, for Catherine and her group also joined the fight, shocking Edward as this would be his first time seeing his mother after killing her several years back. While Aigis was surprised to see Makoto again, not so much Shinjiro, there was one thing off. Hero and Zero Two were missing, even in the afterlife. Throughout the first week of July, both Coral and Sub-Coral Knights worked at a neck-breaking pace to battle a whole slew of threats, from Onis from the past, to the Revenants, to even some random guards jumping in from 2012. In addition, Satsuki clashing with Ryuko several times also did not help. It wouldn't take long until she found out what would happen to her in the coming years. On July 2nd, she went after Melina since she still had her Junketsu, in the hopes that she would be powerful enough to defeat her would-be killer. But even with her life fibers, Melina's Shining Ray overpowered her, and tried to talk her out of it. But at that point, Satsuki's mother Ragyo and her artificially created daughter Nui intervened. Ragyo, seeing the endless possibilities of conquering all timelines, made her execute her world domination plan much sooner than intended. But this was all part of Satsuki's plan. Not only did she read about her death in 2015, but learning that her own mother would betray her and that her sister would be the one who would save the day. Thus, she pledged her alliance to Sub-Coral and Coral Knights while shooing away Ragyo, though she would return later on. On the flip side, Ari had awakened and began to attack her blood-related relatives, with Kula and Futaba keeping a strong mind to avoid being possessed. That's when Sunny and Yan stepped in to try to seal the goddess away, but they were not as lucky as they hoped the first time around. While Melina did not get the chance to fight Dark Raiden one last time, her sister got much better luck, having a proper fight with her Revenant clone Katana X and ultimately killing her off, finally closing the exiled chapter of her life. Nearing towards the end of the week, it seemed that the conflict was wrapping up, and eventually the mastermind behind the Hourglass hijack had to reveal himself. The hijacker in question was none other than Hiro? He explained that he was abandoned by all of Shareverse and decided the best action was to rewrite history in his own hands. That way he will never be forgotten. While that did sound suspicious for somebody like Ichigo, she could have not believed her best friend would do such a thing. But almost at pure random, Hiro was shot by his supposed wife, 02, to which she proclaimed that was not her darling. The following idea actually came to me in a dream where I watched an episode of Darling in the Franxx that explains the following. When Hiro and 02 were kids and taken back to the lab, Hiro's body was rapidly deteriorating from the Klaxosapien DNA contact he had with 02 from his open wound. The surgeons could do very little as the infection was spreading fast. So, Dr. Franxx made the decision to remove all of the infected blood out of Code 016 and use it as the template for a clone off of the original subject. So the hero that we follow throughout the series is actually a clone of the original Code 016, with most of his memories carried over, which explains his sudden Klaxosapien transformation at the end of the series, because his entire body is already filled with their DNA. 02 was just the activator. As for the original Code 016, he was placed in stasis, locked in a secure private area. This stasis would still be unknown to everyone, even after all of the other codes were released from their stasis. After an undisclosed time in the Darling universe, Code 016's stasis would be released. By this point, their universe had already come into contact with the Prime universe of Shareverse, meaning he got a crash course of everything that happened. Disgusted by the sight that he was left to die while his clone made a heroic sacrifice and got married in the afterlife, Code 016 decided he would do everything in his power to have his clone lose everything in a blink of an eye. The other half of his body was made up of self-made robotics that he could easily hack anything, mechanical or ethereal. Considering that Code 016 named the others from Squad 13 off of their numbers through the Japanese language, he decided that since the clone was now using the name Hiro, the original called himself Iku. He would spend the next few months studying and analyzing Hiro's patterns and eventually finding his way into Coral Knights. From there, he learns about the Hourglass and that it could be his one-way ticket to his success. As such, he was able to kidnap Hiro and steal him away, posing as his clone for the time being. Then, in the dead of night, he took the Hourglass for himself, but not without first causing chaos as a way to have his actions go under the radar. But when that failed from the help of some Coral Knights, he had to make his appearance. Now, as for 02, she knew that her husband was acting strange, so she went behind his back to uncover the truth. Throughout the week, she had been disguising herself as a rogue warrior, trying to find clues on where her darling could be imprisoned at. After this elongated reveal, Iku made his retreat, setting the stage for the final push, and that would come to fruition on July 3rd, 2019. Iku made his base in Nether Outworlds from 2018 to have one final showdown, alongside the stolen Hourglass. Both Carmilla and Edward made their forces hit the palace hard. Both groups fought numerous Onis from the past, so this was a cakewalk for the most part. With the more experienced and redeemed Liu Kang helping out, he fought his Revenant counterpart one-on-one. And with that, the skills were clearly unbalanced. Ari had one more battle as Yan was able to seal her away, hoping this time she doesn't come back. The two sisters fought their mother in a more rushed finale to their show. Throughout the climactic showdown, 02 was able to override Iku's control of the hourglass and dip her way into multiple timelines. She soul-searched in every timeline she could imagine to find Hiro. But in the most fitting of time periods, Hiro was locked away in isolation and a theoretical end of time. Because the far future is always changing in Shareverse, there is no set point of when the universe ends or whatnot. So Hiro had been stuck in an empty void for weeks on end, the perfect spot for him to believe he lost everything. But in comes his wife to free him from his chains. With this reunion, the two return to the battle. The main three characters made their way to the hourglass to encounter Iku once more. However, John, yeah, remember him, somehow got in the way. Carmilla was inclined for a rematch with him, but then she got stopped. Hiro and 02 returned and wished to join the fight at the 11th hour. Now you might be asking, how would they fight without any Frankses? Turns out they took a page out of Coral Knights' book and used similar abilities that X Squad 13 had. 02 using a human-sized version of Starlitia Apex with Hiro in the back for support. The two fought the machine, and the fight was clearly in their favor as soon as they pulled out their ultimate weapon, 02 switching to Starlitia Gold and activating Void Null, a move that ignores all attacks and defenses from the opponent. With that, the two became the second known people in Shareverse to kill the T-3000 without the use of magnets. Going back to the main battle, Edward and Carmilla fought Iku and pushed him to the point where he was starting to lose grip on the hourglass. But once more, they were stopped, this time by Ichigo. She felt betrayed that the man that once gave her her name would do such a horrific action and have no sympathy over it. It would lead into a fight between the two, where Ichigo clashed with Iku, and she would be the one to fully defeat him with a slice on the back, resulting him to fall into the hourglass and presumably meet his end. With all of the threats being resolved, Liu Kang returned to the hourglass and began to slowly but surely return everything back to the way it was. However, it would take a few days, so everyone got time off for the holidays. 2012 Ryuko and Satsuki got to meet the present-day deceased counterparts of themselves, and they talked for a bit, explaining that they would eventually rebuild their sisterly relationship even after death. Additionally, Edward got some time with his mother again and felt much more fulfilled in his duties than the last time they met. Aigus having a proper goodbye with Makoto, again leaving Shinji in the dirt, and Ichigo made her proper peace with 02. Sunny and Yan decided to make a more impactful residence in the Prime Universe of Shareverse and decided to hang around on Carmilla's side if Ari returns. On July 5th, Liu Kang restored the timeline and everyone went home. Overall, Double Coral Knights 3 feels like a closure to a lot of people. The Revenant threats had ended, Katana finds her peace, the deceased could be rested once more, and the seal for Ori has been placed. Right? In a last-minute jump scare, it turns out Nui from 2012 was able to get a hold of present-day Ragyo and release her from Hell's prison. With the past and present Nui, Ragyo absorbed both of them as a form of sacrifice, because underneath all of the life fibers, Ragyo had a defected holy gene from birth. With this, Ari was able to infect her body and become Devil Ragyo. With the past versions of Ryuko and Satsuki gone, there was no force to counteract her. Even Yan was virtually powerless from her soaring power level. That's when the Flame God himself stepped in. Liu Kang only fought his past Revenant self, and that was more of a pushover. Fighting a devil goddess on equal footing was a real challenge. This was a solo battle, and the two fought all across time. But with the hourglass at the upper hand, Liu Kang decided the only way to defeat Ragyo was to give her total dissatisfaction. Kicking her into the hourglass, Ragyo's body was evaporated, leaving Ori's soul to be sent to hell. However, it would be revealed that Ragyo didn't die, but instead, she regressed into an infant. Meaning yes, Liu Kang performed a babality. He gifted the child to her own children, in the hopes that they could raise her in a brighter life in heaven. But with the final conflict being properly resolved, this time everybody went home. Liu Kang would continue to make his pocket timeline while also abiding by the request given to him by Warner Brothers. Both Edward and Carmilla would continue their series without any issues, and all is well. Sometime after Double Coral Knights 3, Hero and Zero Two received a knock on their door at their house in heaven. What they found was an infant, one who looks no different than Hero as a baby. Much like Ragyo, Iku is given a second chance at life, being raised by those who are renowned as heroes. Hopefully, these two would be able to continue that legacy. And so, that was the big crossover for both Coral and Subcoral Knights. With such similar sounding names, it was only fitting to have them cross over eventually. While the two series continued their services, nothing else would be worthwhile to discuss in separate videos. But if that changes, I will make sure to make videos based on the current events that come and goes within those alignments. So if you enjoyed the video, be sure to like and subscribe. With that, I'm AJ, and I'll see you all in the next one.